Mindfulness in a war zone vertical bar, mindful way. What does it mean to breathe when the air is thick with ash and fear? Can presence survive not in a temple but in a trench? This isn't about battlefields. It's about the battlefield inside the human heart. Imagine this: sirens screaming louder than your own thoughts, buildings collapsing like dominoes, and still someone chooses to close their eyes and take a mindful breath. This is not fiction. This is not poetic idealism. This is the raw, beating truth of what it means to be human when humanity is threatened. In the center of devastation, when smoke blurs the sky and morning light feels like memory, some souls still choose to show up. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but fully. They feel the trembling in their chest and do not run. They taste the metallic fear in their mouth and still choose gentleness. They understand that even in war, we are not just bodies, we are breath. This is not a story of escape. It's a story of return. Return to presence. Return to what cannot be bombed, burned, or broken, the quiet, powerful truth of being. And so begins our journey into one of the most profound examples of mindful resistance ever witnessed. The story of a young monk in the midst of war. We are often taught subtly, or outright, that peace is something we must wait for. That mindfulness will come once things settle down, when the deadlines are over, when the grief fades, when the noise finally stops. But real life rarely offers that kind of pause. In a war zone, there is no waiting room for healing. There is no perfect time for inner peace. The bombs don't ask for your permission. The sirens won't schedule around your self-care. And still within that chaos, people find a way. That's the paradox. We think peace is a product of our environment, but often it is a decision made right in the middle of the noise. Mindfulness is not a retreat from the world. It is a decision to meet the world fully awake. You don't need incense. You don't need silence. You don't even need certainty. What you need is presence. Presence that breathes, even as the world holds its breath. Presence that says, "This moment is unbearable, and I will still live it with my whole heart." Presence that becomes an anchor, not when the sea is calm, but precisely when the waves rise. And so, in the middle of shattered routines, of disrupted lives and broken streets, a quiet revolution begins. A revolution of one breath, one grounded second, one refusal to disappear inside the fear. It may look like nothing from the outside, but inside, it changes everything. In the next chapter, we will walk into these small but mighty moments, the brief flickers of mindful presence that bloom even in the darkest places. In the last part, we explored how mindfulness isn't something we wait for. It's something we create, even in the middle of disaster. But how exactly does that presence look in the real world? What does it mean to stay grounded when everything around you is shaking? Let us now turn our attention to the smallest moments, the ones so gentle, so brief, they could easily go unnoticed, and yet they carry the weight of everything. In Ukraine, under the cold concrete of a basement shelter, a mother rocks her baby in the dark. Outside, missiles scream through the sky, but inside, she hums softly, steadily, a lullaby. Her voice trembles, but she doesn't stop. That melody becomes a lifeline, not just for her child, but for her own sanity. In Gaza, amid rubble and ruin, a boy clutches his younger brother's hand. The earth shakes, the walls tremble, and in that trembling silence, he closes his eyes. He begins to count. 1 breath, 2, 3. It is the only thing he can control. His breath becomes an anchor in the storm. In Syria, a teacher stands before a fractured blackboard, cracked by explosions. Her classroom is missing windows. Half her students are gone. Still, she takes a piece of chalk and draws a single flower. She turns to the children who remain and says gently, "Let's breathe with it." The room is still, and for a moment, there is no war, only wonder. These moments are not performances. They are not escape. They are tiny revolutions, rebellions of tenderness in the face of terror. Because mindfulness, real mindfulness, doesn't have to be profound to be powerful. Sometimes, the quietest act of presence is the most courageous thing a human being can offer. One steady breath, one grounded moment, one conscious pause. That's all it takes to begin again. In the previous part, we witnessed how mindfulness can bloom in the smallest gestures: a lullaby, a breath, a flower drawn on a broken wall. But these moments only exist because someone chose to feel instead of going numb. That choice is where the real challenge lies. Because trauma, as cunning as it is cruel, often whispers the wrong lesson. It tells us that strength means shutting down, that survival requires silence, that if you feel nothing, nothing can hurt you. But that isn't mindfulness. That's defense. True presence is not the absence of emotion. It is the willingness to stay with what arises, to sit with the sorrow, to feel the tremble, to allow fear to visit, but not to move in, to be here fully, vulnerably, awake, even when here feels unbearable. That is not weakness. That is the beginning of healing. Mindfulness doesn't numb us. It sharpens our senses. It deepens our contact with reality. It brings us so close to the raw edges of experience that we remember what it means to be human. And humanity, in its most sacred form, is not invulnerability. It is the courage to touch pain without collapsing, to grieve without shutting down, to feel fear and still act with compassion, to tremble and still speak truth. Presence doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. It means saying, "This is hard, and I'm still here." That is mindfulness. That is power. In the last section, we explored the radical strength it takes to feel even in the presence of pain. That strength, when sustained and channeled, becomes something even more powerful: resistance. But not the kind you might imagine. There is a kind of resistance that doesn't march or shout. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't break things. It builds something far more enduring. It is the resistance of presence. It is the quiet act of lighting a candle when the lights have all gone out, not to deny the darkness, but to defy it. It is choosing to return to your breath, not because life is easy, but precisely because it isn't. It is refusing to let your heart harden in response to cruelty, refusing to let your soul become a mirror of what hurt it. Thich Nhat Hanh called this engaged Buddhism, a mindfulness that doesn't hide from the world's suffering, but meets it gently, steadily, with eyes wide open and hands ready to heal. It's the kind of mindfulness that walks into fire, not to be burned, but to bear witness. It is political because it chooses peace in a world designed to divide us. It is spiritual because it connects us to the part of ourselves that nothing can touch. It is revolutionary because it says, "I will not become what wounded me. I will respond with something deeper." Nelson Mandela, confined behind walls and steel, once wrote, "Even in prison, they could not imprison my mind." That is the essence of mindful resistance. The world can take your comfort, it can take your voice, but it cannot take your presence unless you give it away. To anyone caught in the crossfire, whether the bombs are outside your window or inside your mind, this is for you. You don't need to carry the world alone. You don't have to be unshakable, unbreakable, or unbothered. You just need one honest breath, 1 second of presence, one quiet whisper to yourself that says, "I'm still here." Sometimes, that single breath is the beginning of your return. Because when a single soul chooses presence in the middle of violence, it does something extraordinary. It plants a seed. And if you've ever seen a flower grow through concrete, then you know that seed is stronger than it seems. You are not weak for feeling. You are not broken for needing peace. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. So breathe, and let that breath be your quiet act of defiance. Let it be your prayer. Let it be your way home. If this video moved something inside you, if it helped you feel seen, or reminded you of your own strength, share it with someone who might be quietly fighting a battle of their own. Subscribe to Mindful Way Television, where we don't just tell stories, we listen for what's beneath them. We believe that healing doesn't begin with noise. It begins with noticing. And if you're still with us, we invite you to stay for what's next. The next video may hold the message you didn't even know you needed today. Comment below to let us know what touched you. Help us grow this space of quiet power, one breath, one soul, one story at a time. Because sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin in silence.